This is Algebra 1, Lesson 6. Our objective today is how do you subtract real numbers. Simple objective, simple once you understand, very, very important for the rest of your math career. So please make sure that you understand this. In order to understand how to subtract real numbers, you need to understand a couple terms, which are really the same term, just worded differently. The first one is opposite numbers. And you may already have a kind of idea of that. If I said, what's the opposite of 5? You'd probably say -5. But here it is in words. Opposite numbers have the same absolute value but different signs. So for instance, -3 and 3 are what we call opposite numbers because the absolute value of -3 is 3, and the absolute value of 3 is 3. So the absolute value is the same, but their signs are different. Another name for opposite numbers is what we call additive inverse. Whenever you add up additive inverses, they add to 0. So kind of with our same example here, if we said 3 plus a -3, that would equal 0. So those are what we call additive inverses. So opposite numbers of each other are additive inverses. Which brings us to our objective, and that is the rules for subtracting real numbers. And the rule is simple, kind of. To subtract a number, add its inverse. Or if you wanted to say, add its opposite. And before you go any further, you probably want to pause this movie if you need to and review over your rules from Lesson 5. They're on page 23. Which just reminds you how to add real numbers. So if you're having any problems with adding real numbers, then you need to go back and look at those before you move on. So do that now. Okay, excellent. So now that you have done that, we're going to go ahead and work on this, subtracting real numbers. So remember, to subtract a real number, you add its opposite, and then you just go about the rules that you just reviewed. So let's add this one here. We're going to subtract these. -13 minus 8. Well, this is going to be the same thing by following that rule as saying -13 plus a -8. And I said 13 but wrote 3. -13 plus a -8. Well, following our rules that we just reviewed, since they have the same sign, we're just going to add those two. So you're kind of thinking, what is 13 plus 8? 13 plus 8 is going to give me 21. And you keep the same signs. This is -21. The next one here is -32 minus a -22. So you're going to say -32. And you're going to add the opposite of -22. The opposite of -22 would be +22. So I'm going to say -32 plus +22. These have different signs, so I'm going to subtract them. Say 32 minus 22, which gives me 10. And keep the sign of the bigger one, since 32 is bigger. I'm going to say -10. So hopefully you're catching on what's going on between here and here and here and here. Let's keep going. 4.5 minus a -8.2 is going to be 4.5 plus, what's the opposite of a -8.2? Well, +8.2 is its opposite. So just add those. It's going to be 0.7. 8 plus 4 is 12. This is equal to 12.7. And one last more before we move on to the next slide. This is going to be -6/7 plus the opposite of -1/7. Opposite of -1/7 is going to be +1/7. So just think about subtracting these with 6/7 minus 1/7. That's going to be 5/7. Keep the sign of the bigger ones. It's going to be negative 5/7. Alright, this is lesson practice there on page 28. It's not part of your homework, but it should hopefully get you pretty close to being able to do all of your homework. These first four are pretty much just like the ones we just did, so I'm going to try to kind of go through those fairly quickly. Again, feel free to rewind and do it again if you need to. So this is going to be 14 plus 22, because the opposite of negative 22 is positive 22. That's just going to be 36. It's going to be negative 7 plus the opposite of 16, which is going to be negative 16. Same sign, so I'm going to add those. 16 plus 7 is going to be 23. Keep the same sign. This is going to be negative 23.4 plus the opposite of 18.72, so this would be negative 18.72. Same sign, so I'm just going to add them. 23.4, 18.72, 2, 11, 9, 12, 4, 42.12. This one's going to be the same thing as negative 2/3 plus a negative 1/6. Have to have the same denominator, so this is going to be the same thing as negative 4/6, because I multiplied this one over here by 2/2. And then I'm going to add that negative 1/6. Same sign, so add negative 5/6. I didn't feel like writing out the whole word problem, so look in your book if you want. But E says the set of whole numbers is closed under subtraction. So we need to say if that is true or false. So remember, we have to see if we can find, does subtraction unlock the door to get us out of that box? So we're just trying to see if this is true or false. So let's see. 12 minus 5, that's equal to 7. That's still a whole number. But the question is, can we get out of whole numbers using subtraction? What about 5 minus 12? That's actually going to equal negative 7, because this is saying 5 plus a negative 12. Right, same thing. So negative 7 is not a whole number, so I'm going to say false. And then it says give a counter example for false statements. So that's going to be 5 minus 12 is equal to negative 7. So that would be my answer there for part E. F, same thing. Determine whether the statements are true or false. Give a counterexample for false statements. The set of rational numbers is closed under subtraction. Well, notice we were able to get a positive number to change negative, but rational numbers include negatives and positives and 0, and decimals and things like that. So this one is actually going to come out to be true. Can't escape with subtraction from the rational numbers. And then number G, number G says on January 23rd, 1960, a group dove to a record depth of 37,800 feet below sea level. The record set previously on January 7th of the same year was 13,800 feet less than the dive on January 23rd. What was the record set on January 7th in relation to sea level? So if you want to think about a picture of that, here is sea level up here, my beautiful sea. So to dive down, you're going down in the negative direction. So if you're above sea level, you're going to be up here like, oh, I'm 10 feet above sea level. But down here would be I'm at negative 20 feet below sea level. So to say that they dove 37,800 feet is actually to say that they dove, it's a negative number because they went down. And then they subtract from that this other number, 13,800. But again, that's a depth, so it's going to be a negative number. So since we're subtracting, we're going to actually add its opposite. The opposite of the negative is just going to be the positive. Since these numbers are different signs, one's negative, one's positive, I'm going to subtract them. Zero, zero, zero. 7 minus 3, 4, 3, 2. So this is the number, but of course I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger number. So it's going to be negative 24,000. Brings us to the end of the lesson. Your homework is right here. Page 29, you can do all of them from lesson 6, all of them from lesson 5, and then 10 more of your choice. Good luck.